The discovery of century-old murals has reawakened interest in the Louisa Hotel. We'll peek inside as its renovation is nearly complete.
I think it's our only east-west street that continuously connects from Elliott Bay to Lake Washington.
It links Seattle from saltwater to fresh and is one of the city's oldest and most interesting thoroughfares. Kenny G speaks about his early path to stardom, also who inspired him and why he loves to perform at Jazz Alley.
It's one of the nicest jazz clubs that exists.
These stories and more next on CityStream. I'm Mona Locke. Welcome to CityStream at Dimitriou's Jazz Alley. For more than 30 years, this has been one of Seattle's premier places to enjoy the world's best jazz and fusion sets. Many performers say it's one of the finest jazz clubs in America. Regulars rave about its ambiance, intimate setting, and great sound. We'll have much more in a bit. The city's link to jazz goes way back. The connection became clear after murals depicting Seattle's jazz scenes in the 1920s and 30s were discovered in Chinatown. That revelation inside the historic Louisa Hotel focused attention on a landmark building recently infused with new life. Shannon G has the story.
We're going to go up King, and we're going to take a look at kind of the back side of the building. The architects that designed the Louisa were students of Frank Lloyd Wright.
Built in 1909, the Louisa Hotel quickly became a popular spot for immigrants on their way to cannery jobs in Alaska.
The bay windows are also a historic feature.
Historic and cherished by Tanya Wu and her family.
My dad bought the building from the original owners in 1963 for $160,000.
This tour group is amongst the first to get a look inside a hotel once filled with hidden passageways, secret stairwells, and other oddities.
Where's the hand?
Oh, the hand is right over there. Do you see that?
Oh!
A devastating fire led to a long, complicated restoration project.
On Christmas Eve in December 2013, the Louisa has suffered a pretty catastrophic fire.
About 40% of the building was pretty much in flames.
Water damage from the fire forced 7 ground floor businesses to close, including Mon Hay, Chinatown's first bakery, the Sea Garden restaurant, and Leem's pet shop.
So the only thing holding the building together was the roof and the walls. And without the roof, the building was in danger of collapsing onto our neighbors. So we had no choice. We had to start emergency stabilization.
There goes the back entrance. It's been pretty heartbreaking for me just seeing it come down. Just wish we didn't have the fire and just wish it didn't have to come down because there's just so much history and so many things I feel like we could be discovering about it.
A fascinating discovery did come 3 years later, as renovation workers removed a chute used to slide bags of flour into the bakery.
The demo guys went in to demo the chute. They discovered all of the murals on both sides of the staircase.
These are the murals that stood hidden for decades.
When I first saw the murals in the staircase, I was just gaga. It's like, oh my God, this is really here.
Life-size oil paintings offer a glimpse of Seattle's bustling jazz scene during Prohibition, and Club Royale was a place to mingle, dance, and drink.
It was like the upper stratosphere of society. They would come here, they'd wear their finest clothes and have a fun night out.
As little kids, we used to walk past this wall all the time.
Months later, another discovery. The interior walls had been drenched during the 2013 fire. Little by little, the wallpaper flaked away, revealing more murals.
You know, I've done a lot of research and writing about the early jazz scene in Seattle, but I've never actually been in a place like this. Most of the places are gone. To be actually able to peel away the wallpaper paste and see more of this beautiful landscape that used to be there was thrilling to me, absolutely thrilling.
Historian and author Paul DeBarros said Seattle's jazz scene included some colorful characters like Jelly Roll Morton and Noodle Smith, but prominent musicians did develop.
Well, I think it's just really important for people to know that we had a jazz scene here, and that it was in the International District predominantly, as well as up on 12th and Jackson.
And back then, it seems the clubs were open to all.
Asians, blacks, whites, they all kind of mixed and hung out together. There didn't seem to be any friction, racial friction. Everyone seemed to be having a good time, and you see that in the murals on the stairwell.
Club Royale was part of Seattle's underground scene, a place to enjoy fine jazz, bootleg liquor, and gambling.
We used a doorbell to get down into the club. We weren't entirely sure if it was a warning system or more of a, we're here, please open the door system.
When you came down the stairs, they made sure they knew who you were. They vetted you before you got to the cloakroom, and then you checked your coat, and then you came in. Gambling was really big here.
Gambling also contributed to this hotel's darkest hour.
Wami Club actually was over there.
February 18th, 1983. 13 people were murdered in the high-stakes gambling club. Afterward, its doors were padlocked shut. The club was later destroyed in the 2013 fire.
I really think it's important for a city to look forward, but also preserve what happened in the past so we know who we are and where we came from.
Just kind of take one or two steps in, kind of look around, then we'll queue back up.
For the Wu family, the murals are one link to the past they plan to protect.
We're going to be able to put a glass at the entrance of the staircase so people walking on 7th can actually see them and learn about Seattle's jazz history.
It's pretty cool looking inside a time capsule.
You're gonna have to drag me out of here.
What a find.
And with its renovation nearly complete, the Louisa, which once housed Chinese, Japanese, and Filipino immigrants, will once again rent to those with lower incomes.
It hasn't been occupied since the 1930s, so this is a new chapter.
From this to this, the new building is far different from the old. In the new Louisa Hotel, there are no hidden passageways, only a positive path forward.
We want to honor the past and its history. We're going to put something better in its place and bring life into it and bring people into Chinatown.
The historic Louisa Hotel is preparing to reopen soon with retail shops on the ground level, and 84 new studio and one-bedroom apartments will welcome tenants for the first time in decades. It started as a horse trail and is now one of Seattle's most celebrated streets. A tour of Madison Street as CityStream continues. Navigating the clogged streets of Seattle can be frustrating. All the revisions, restriping, and repairs make it tough to get around. But this is inevitable as the city evolves. Looking back, some of Seattle's streets have quite a story to tell. We sent CityStream's road scholar, Felix Bunnell, to explore how Madison Street has grown and changed over the past century.
Madison Street. It's one of Seattle's oldest thoroughfares, spanning from the days of horseback and shoe leather through the era of cable cars and into the 21st century.
Follow the trail. First it was a trail, and then later on, of course, a cable or electric line to the lake.
Junius Rochester is an author and historian. He's devoted his life to understanding and writing about Seattle's past. He says Madison Street came about because of John McGilvra,
He came out here to establish a farm for his family, but he needed to get to work. He was the key attorney for the area, so he improved on his own the so-called Indian Trail to the downtown of Seattle. Later on, it got wide enough to take a horse and buggy through, and then it grew into a cable line later on.
From its earliest incarnation as a trail and right up to the present, Madison Street has connected saltwater Elliott Bay to freshwater Lake Washington.
It starts out to be the center of the old city at the Coleman Building, right down on the waterfront, Elliott Bay and all that, and then moves on up to what's called First Hill or Yesler Hill, and then it continues on to Second Hill, and then past what is called the Arboretum, and then over the hump in what is Pope and Talbot country, right behind me, by the way, which is a closed community today called Broadmoor, and then zoom downhill, right to where we're standing at the edge of the water here on Lake Washington.
It's always been a very important linkage connecting from the east side, Madison Park, all the way to the waterfront. So I think it's our only east-west street that continuously connects from Elliott Bay to Lake Washington.
As city traffic engineer, Dong Ho Chang is more concerned with the future of Madison Street than he is with its past.
Madison Street initially had a set of cable cars, 2 lines that connected along the entire length of Madison. And then it got upgraded to the electric trolley lines that we currently see today. We are now looking to improve that. There'll be a full reconstruction of the streets. We'll be improving really the condition for people who are walking, biking, and taking transit.
Junius Rochester says that Madison Street has always been about transportation. The busy route helped Madison Park become a popular destination for recreation and merriment, so much so that it discouraged the famous Olmsted brothers from including the park in their grandiose plans for Seattle.
I decided that this was too much of a kind of a circus atmosphere. Dad Wagner's band, people like my father sleeping in tents, swimming and yelling, and bicycle races at a little golf course, and noise. So they did not include this as part of the activity for a park system that the Olmsted were designing.
For decades, especially before the Lake Washington floating bridges, Madison was also a jumping-off point for the east side.
I remember that there was a ferry there that connected Seattle with Kirkland, and that was fascinating because we went to Madison Park and to watch the ferry come and go.
The Reverend Dr. Phyllis Beaumonte grew up in the central area, and she remembers places that were community fixtures along Madison.
The barbershops and the restaurants and the roller rink and the YWCA affiliate Phyllis Wheatley.
Another fixture on Madison is Mount Zion Baptist Church, where Reverend Dr. Beaumonte is associate minister. Mount Zion's been part of the community for more than 100 years.
Mount Zion was the hub of civil rights as it relates to meetings, leadership, hope for the future for African Americans who suffered a lot of oppression. Mount Zion has always stood as a beacon of hope and faith, not just for African Americans, but for all people.
The African American community in the central area traces its roots to the 19th century. And then, as a result of redlining, a now illegal way to exclude minorities from owning property, the central area became the city's de facto African American neighborhood.
I would say that it brought forward a sense of love for one another, and with that love came a desire for equality and to work together to bring about change, and which they did.
For Reverend Beaumonte, Madison Street was, and remains, much more than just a 66-foot wide transportation corridor.
Madison Street was a central locator for directions east, west, north, and south. And Madison Street is still an important street in the history of Seattle, I believe.
Junius Rochester shares his high regard for Madison Street.
The importance to Seattle history is a story mostly of transportation. That is, cable car, automobile, ferry, and of course the Mosquito Fleet, which wasn't exactly a ferry, except it was a passenger ferry. So it was a way to get across the lake into other locations that are now part of our world.
Back at the Municipal Archives, Dong Ho Chang says that with improvements ahead for enhanced bus service, Madison Street is coming full circle to its original role. And hey, how about bringing back those cable cars?
But no cable cars coming back to Madison, as far as you know?
No.
Felix says those old cable cars that once ran up and down Madison Street and Seattle's other hills were almost saved as a tourist attraction back around 1940. But it just didn't pencil out and the cables were cut. For more of Felix Bunnell's CityStream stories about local history, go to seattlechannel.org. We'll be right back. And we're back at Dimitriou's Jazz Alley with founder, creator, John Dimitriou. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello, thanks for being here.
Yeah, so this club has been around some 40 years almost in Seattle, about 34 right here in this location. What was the impetus for starting a jazz club?
Well, that's what I know how to do, is run a jazz club. And I started at a young age working in restaurants, and I fell into the opportunity to open this club in 1980, and here we are.
Was there an influence in your life that drew you to jazz?
Well, I've been involved in music a good part of my life. When I was a young man, in my teens, I used to work at the Edgewater Inn, where people like Herb Alpert performed and some of the other jazz greats from that era. And so I was shown the light at a very early age.
And was your brother involved too?
My brother actually he worked there as well, but he also had his own club down in Pioneer Square called the Pioneer Bank. It was more of a restaurant, but it had a jazz area in the basement, about 150 seats, and that's where I really cut my teeth booking jazz. People like Bill Evans and Mongo Santa Maria, Charles Mingus, Dexter Gordon, Carmen McRae, people like that. Ernestine Anderson, when she came back from Texas.
So I have a little clip to show you from our 2008 Seattle Channel documentary on you and jazz, and I want you to watch this so we can get a reaction.
I decided that I wanted to become a musician, so I went out and bought a set of drums, and I formed a band called Joe Bananas and the Bunch. And it was called Joe Bananas and the Bunch, a group with appeal. And it was a lounge band, and I was the weakest player in the band, and actually got fired from my own band after a while.
Is that true? You got fired?
It's true.
Oh, did you play again, or was that your swan song?
That was probably my swan song.
Oh, well, that's too bad. Maybe you can play for us today.
Well, I think it was very fortunate for me and for my career that I stopped playing music and started presenting it.
Well, and you're known as a great booker of jazz musicians. Do you still get so excited when you see these artists come through and performers come through?
I do. I'm excited that people are excited. I'm excited at the number of people that come and see the audience, the artists. It's great. It's growing, and we're really happy about that.
And how has jazz changed through the decades? Right, like from when you first started the Jazz Alley, has it changed since then?
Well, it has changed in some regards, and a lot of the time it stayed the same. You know, some of the jazz greats that we have today, like Wynton Marsalis, are more traditionalists. They like to play music of Duke Ellington or some of the greats. And then some of the newer artists like to play some of the newer music, some funk music, and so it varies.
And how about the audiences? Have they changed over time?
Well, they've gotten older, but they've brought their kids. So we're introducing the music to young people at a young age, and that's a good thing.
And this venue, it's such a wonderful place because it's large and yet it still feels somewhat intimate. I mean, was there planning in that?
Well, yeah, we worked really hard to make that happen. We like the intimacy of a small room, and yet from an economic standpoint, you need to have a certain number of seats to make it all viable.
And do you come and watch the performances?
I do. A lot of times I work in the kitchen though. I like working in the kitchen. So I can see kind of everything from there and get to see all the staff, and then I pop out and spend time watching the show and head home.
Through all the years, you've had so many different performers and some really famous ones. Any in particular that stand out?
That's a really hard question because there have been so many, and to mention a few would be leave a few out, so a lot out. But you know, Ray Brown was wonderful, Dizzy Gillespie was wonderful, Oscar Peterson was amazing, Dave Brubeck was amazing, Betty Carter. There's been a lot of people that come through here over the years.
And you'd mentioned to me special artists who helped you design the stage and the setting too.
Well, yeah, we were talking about Mose Allison, who was here when we were just designing the final build-out. And I asked him about the size of the stage. I said, Mose, what do you think I should do as far as this, how high or how low? And his response was that I should make it as low as possible because he wants to be as close to the audience as he possibly can. And we did that, and it's worked out for us.
Last question, any favorite memory?
No, I can't think of one. That's a hard one. There's been a lot of very nice memories. A lot of sad ones, but the vast majority have been very, very nice. I love my job, and I love doing what I do.
Thank you so much, John Dimitriou, for being here with us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
You just heard from the owner. Next, why a star performer loves coming home to play at Jazz Alley. The allure of Jazz Alley is unmistakable when you consider the long list of musicians who've performed here and then come back.
Honestly, it's one of the nicest jazz clubs that exists.
Seattle native Kenny G makes it a point to return each year.
We get to play big concerts, but we like to come to the jazz clubs in special places. One is New York, the Blue Note, because it's just so prestigious. We also play Yoshi's in Oakland, and we do Jazz Alley in Seattle, so I love it. But this one's got a balcony, and it's got a little bit of elbow room. Stage is nice and big, so it really works well. Dimitriou does a great job. I feel like I like to stay in touch with my roots, stay close to my Seattle people.
His Seattle people, as he calls them, as well as fans from around the world, have followed Kenny G for more than 40 years, since he was in high school. What does it mean to you to come back to your hometown and play here at the Jazz Alley?
For me, it's a lot. It means a lot because, you know, I just went to school at Franklin, and I didn't know if I was going to be a musician or not. I didn't plan on it. When I was at Franklin, you know, I started playing with Barry White and his Love Unlimited Orchestra. You know, he was like the biggest R&B singer in the world at that time, and at 17, for whatever reason, I got this chance to do this. And I remember being at high school, going to do the concerts, and then coming back to high school after the weekend of concerts and having everybody there seen me play. It's like, whoa, and then all this, not that I do it for the accolades, but it was really, I mean, you're 17, okay, so if someone says you're really great, it makes you like doing what you did that they say that about. So they said that, so I practiced more, and then when I practiced more, I got better, and then people told me, oh, you're really good. Oh, okay, I'll practice more, and then on and on and on.
He still practices every day, working to refine the music that defines his style.
Here's what I want to show you. This is one picture I really love.
Kenny took us on a little tour to show us one of his inspirations.
This is when you know you got to love John Dimitriou, okay, because of this right here. This might not mean anything to anybody, but for me, I'll tell you why it means so much. Okay, this sax player's name, Stanley Turrentine. Stanley Turrentine is one of the great sax players of all time. He's like a John Coltrane and a, you know, like a Charlie Parker, a Cannonball Adderley, and then you got Stanley Turrentine. And Stanley Turrentine had this way of combining a real soulful, gritty sax sound with jazz, and he was one of the first guys to play in this style. This picture means a lot to me because I listened to him a lot when I was growing up because I loved his style so much, and so the fact that John has this means that he knows and loves real jazz, which means a lot to me.
And it means a lot to Haley Lauren, who is performing on this night. Kenny G says this is exactly why Jazz Alley is so special. It provides a venue for established artists and up-and-comers as well.
You need places to perform, so you've got to be able to go out and find a jazz club and play, and you have to have somebody like John who's willing to pay these people because he has to take a chance that people are going to come and see it. He's definitely performing a great role for jazz music.
That wraps up this episode of CityStream from Dimitriou's Jazz Alley. If you'd like to learn more about their upcoming shows and events, visit their website at jazzalley.com. Thanks for watching. I'm Mona Locke.